Cleveland didn't just lose a football game. They suffered a full-scale public collapse that detonated across the internet before the players even reached the tunnel. What happened inside MetLife Stadium wasn't a simple bad night or a routine road loss. It was a meltdown so jarring, so visibly out of control, that the entire sports world turned its attention toward one single figure, starting quarterback Dillon Gabriel. And the moment the clock hit 0, the reaction online turned violent in a way the Browns haven't experienced in years. It wasn't disappointment. It wasn't frustration. It was rejection. Social media didn't simply criticize Gabriel. It tore him apart without mercy. Memes, clips, angry threads, and brutal commentary flooded feeds so quickly it felt orchestrated. Fans weren't just upset with the performance. They felt betrayed by it. Every missed throw, every panic moment in the pocket, every wasted drive had piled up over weeks, and MetLife Stadium became the breaking point. By the time the final whistle sounded, Twitter had transformed into a digital riot. "This isn't football," one fan wrote. "This is punishment." Another demanded the team bench Gabriel before he even made it to the bus. And as the posts multiplied, the tone grew darker, sharper, and more coordinated, as though the entire fan base had collectively decided they were done pretending this experiment was working. But something else made the explosion even more intense. Because while Gabriel stumbled through the worst outing of his short NFL career, another quarterback stood only feet away, helmet strapped, eyes locked on the field, saying absolutely nothing. Shedeur Sanders didn't rant. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't try to show up the coaching staff. He just watched. And that silent, composed, almost eerie presence sparked its own wave of conversation. Fans, analysts, even rival supporters saw the same thing. A Ferrari sitting in the garage while a lawnmower was pushed onto the highway. The internet seized on it instantly. Clips of Shedeur on the sidelines spread like wildfire. Screenshots of him standing motionless, waiting, flooded timelines with captions like "He's ready" and "What are we doing?" And the silence that Shedeur held onto all night only added more fuel to the chaos. He didn't need to say he could fix things. His posture already screamed it. Then came the leaks. Anonymous comments from inside the locker room suggesting that the frustration wasn't limited to fans. Rumors that veterans, receivers, and even offensive linemen were questioning the coaching staff's refusal to make a change. "Everyone knows who the best quarterback is," one insider reportedly said, "except the guy calling plays." Those whispers hit the internet like explosives. If you're enjoying this video and loving the content, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. It really helps us know what you want to see more of. And why keep all the excitement to yourself? Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves NFL drama. By the end of the night, Cleveland wasn't dealing with a quarterback controversy. They were facing something much bigger, a crisis of confidence in the organization itself. Fans demanded answers. Players hinted at their own doubts. And the one man who could calm the storm stood waiting on the sideline, untouched by the chaos, prepared for the moment everyone knows is coming. The only question left is how long Cleveland can afford to ignore the obvious. MetLife Stadium didn't feel like a neutral battleground that night. It felt like a pressure cooker, and every mistake Dillon Gabriel made cranked the heat higher until the entire structure seemed ready to burst. From the moment the Browns' offense stepped onto the field, something felt off. The timing was shaky. The reads were late. The confidence, usually fragile but present, looked completely shattered. Fans watching from home could sense it. The crowd inside the stadium could feel it. Even the broadcast team sounded uncomfortable calling the plays unfold. Then came the meltdown. A simple third-down throw sailed 5 yards over an open receiver's head. The camera zoomed in on Gabriel's face, and what viewers saw wasn't frustration or determination. It was confusion, panic, a quarterback searching for answers he clearly didn't have. And that's when the floodgates opened. Cleveland fans in the stands didn't just groan. They erupted, booing so loud it drowned out the Jets' supporters around them. By halftime, every stalled drive became a trigger. Every misread looked like an insult, and every failed possession felt like a personal betrayal to a fan base that had endured too much already. Twitter detonated in real time. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't measured. It was instantaneous. The moment Gabriel missed a wide-open touchdown, the internet pounced as if waiting for the exact second to strike. Memes appeared within seconds. Clips of the misfire were edited, reposted, slowed down, zoomed in, and turned into punchlines. One fan shared a screenshot of Gabriel throwing into empty grass with the caption, "He's allergic to receivers." Another replayed a wobbling sideline pass and added, "Bro punted it." These weren't harmless jokes. They were expressions of a fan base hitting their emotional limit. What made the reaction so explosive was the sense that this wasn't an isolated failure. This performance was the culmination of weeks of growing doubt. Fans who had defended the coaching staff earlier in the season suddenly flipped. People who had preached patience were now calling for immediate changes. The tone shifted from frustration to disbelief, then from disbelief to anger. And within minutes, that anger turned into open revolt. The stadium atmosphere reflected the same energy. Every incomplete pass was met with groans. Every stalled series triggered waves of boos. And the moment Gabriel jogged toward the sideline, defeated and visibly rattled, fans behind the Browns bench began shouting the same thing in unison. "Put in Shedeur!" Not once, not twice. Constantly. The calls grew louder with every mistake. Security guards, stadium workers, even Jets fans turned to look as Cleveland supporters essentially begged for a quarterback switch. And when even Jets fans, the opposing crowd, started chanting, "We want Shedeur," the humiliation became undeniable. That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't criticism anymore. It was a mutiny. A full-blown public rejection of the coaching staff's decisions. A fan base refusing to be quiet. A city demanding to be heard. MetLife hadn't seen a collapse this loud in years. And for Cleveland, this was only the beginning of a much bigger storm. While Gabriel's night spiraled into a public disaster, all eyes slowly shifted toward the one person who wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, and wasn't showing even the slightest crack in composure: Shedeur Sanders. He stood on the sideline like a statue carved out of patience and quiet certainty. Helmet buckled, chin strap clipped, gloves on. Ready, not in the loud, dramatic sense of someone begging for attention, but in the calm, unshakable way of someone who knows his moment is coming, even if the people in charge refuse to acknowledge it. It was his silence that created the noise. Every time Gabriel jogged off the field after another stalled series, the broadcast cameras seemed to drift back to Shedeur, almost involuntarily. Not because he was doing anything dramatic, but because his stillness spoke louder than any rant ever could. He didn't pace. He didn't glare at coaches. He didn't shake his head in frustration. He simply watched the field with a steadiness that contrasted sharply with the chaos unraveling in front of him. And fans noticed immediately. The internet began dissecting every frame of him standing there. Screenshots of his expression flooded timelines with captions like, "This man is ready, and he's seeing everything Gabriel is." Some fans joked that Shedeur's helmet looked like it was begging the coaches to put him in. Others pointed out that his body language didn't show arrogance or impatience, just confidence, the kind that makes people wonder why he isn't already leading the offense. Then came the whispers. Reports surfaced from inside the locker room, suggesting that the calm fans saw on the sideline wasn't just an act. Rumors claimed Shedeur has been preparing like a starter all season, taking mental reps, studying defenses long after meetings ended, and walking into facilities with a focus that veterans respect. Anonymous players began hinting at what many suspected. The team knows he's the better quarterback. One player, speaking off the record after the MetLife meltdown, allegedly said, "Everyone knows who gives us the best chance. Everyone except the guy calling the plays." That line spread online like gasoline catching fire. If the fans were angry before, the leak pushed them into full rebellion. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about Gabriel struggling. It became a debate about why the coaching staff was ignoring the obvious option standing right in front of them. Commentators jumped in with their own theories. Some suggested stubbornness. Others hinted at front office politics. A few even floated the idea that the staff feared the backlash of giving up on Gabriel too early. Through all of it, Shedeur didn't flinch. Every time the camera returned to him, he looked exactly the same, calm, collected, locked in. That quiet confidence became its own statement, a message without words, a challenge without confrontation. And for fans watching, it felt like he was silently saying what they were screaming out loud. I'm ready whenever you decide to stop pretending. In a stadium overflowing with noise, Shedeur's silence became the loudest moment of the night. What happened next inside MetLife Stadium was something no franchise ever wants to experience, because the humiliation didn't stay confined to Cleveland's own supporters. It spread. It multiplied. It bled into the opposing fan base until the entire stadium seemed united in one message the Browns' coaching staff pretended not to hear. The first wave came from the Cleveland section, already on edge after a string of lifeless drives. But once Gabriel overthrew another wide-open receiver, this one drifting harmlessly out of bounds, the tension snapped. Fans jumped to their feet, some pointing at the sideline, others waving their arms as if trying to physically force the coaching staff to look in Shedeur's direction. The words started scattered, angry, emotional. Then they aligned. Put in SHADUR. It wasn't a chant at first, more like a desperate plea echoing from dozens of voices, then hundreds. But as mistakes continued piling up, something unusual began to happen. People wearing green and white, Jets fans who had spent the entire night clowning Cleveland, started joining in. At first it was mocking, then it became momentum. Within minutes, both sides of the stadium were yelling the same thing. We want Shedeur. Not for support, not for rivalry, but because everyone watching the game could see that the Browns' offense was stuck in quicksand, and the one player who could potentially pull them out of it remained untouched on the sideline. The visual was painful. Shedeur standing motionless, helmet secured, while the stadium shook around him with chants demanding his presence. Even Jets fans, who had no reason to care about Cleveland's quarterback controversy, jumped onto social media posting clips of the chants. Imagine being so down bad the enemy crowd wants your backup, one viral tweet read. Another said, "This is the most embarrassing thing I've seen in football all year." The internet loves chaos, and this was the perfect storm: fan mutiny, rival mockery, and a coaching staff pretending none of it existed.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
The broadcast booth felt it too. The commentators, usually diplomatic, let subtle disbelief creep into their voices. They pointed out Shedeur's readiness. They highlighted Gabriel's struggles without sugarcoating. They mentioned the crowd reaction in cautious, measured tones, but viewers could hear the astonishment behind the words. Then came the moment that pushed this situation, beyond simple frustration. A Jets fan in the front row held up a sign aimed directly at the Browns' sideline that read, "Free SHADUR." Cameras caught it. Twitter detonated. Within minutes, the hashtag Free Shedeur trended nationally. The combination of home fans, away fans, analysts, and internet chaos created a pressure the Browns had no ability to control. And in the middle of the noise, Shedeur didn't move an inch. The chants roared around him. The narratives exploded online. But he stayed calm, silent, and focused, almost as if he knew this wasn't just noise. It was the beginning of something much bigger. By the end of the third quarter, it was Cleveland versus New York anymore. It was Cleveland versus its own decisions. The stadium wasn't chanting for a comeback. It was chanting for change. And everyone, fans, media, players, even the opposition, knew exactly what change they wanted. For more than 2 decades, the Cleveland Browns have lived under a shadow that fans jokingly call a curse. But inside the organization, no one is laughing anymore. The quarterback position, meant to be the stabilizing heartbeat of a franchise, has instead become a revolving door, a cautionary tale, and a constant source of national ridicule. And now, as the latest crisis unfolds in front of millions of stunned viewers, that old curse doesn't just feel alive. It feels angry, escalating, and ready to swallow the franchise yet again. The Browns' problem has never been finding quarterbacks, it's keeping them. The jersey with dozens of crossed-out names isn't just a meme, it's a living document of failed eras. From draft busts to injuries to locker room implosions, Cleveland has cycled through quarterbacks with a level of chaos unmatched anywhere else in the league. Each new hope was marketed as the savior who would finally break the curse. And each time, organizational cracks, coaching turnover, front office instability, or poor development slowly widened until everything collapsed. Now, the pressure building around the current quarterback situation threatens to become the most explosive chapter yet. Inside the walls of the Browns' facility, frustration has been building for months. Coaches have argued behind closed doors about philosophy and identity. The front office has quietly pointed fingers over failed evaluations and underperforming investments. And the locker room, already rattled by inconsistent leadership at the top, has started developing invisible factions, players aligning themselves based on who they believe gives the franchise its best chance to win. At the center of these tensions sits a young, polarizing, wildly talented quarterback whose every move is scrutinized. Some see him as a generational playmaker with superstar upside. Others see him as unprepared, inconsistent, and placed into a situation doomed to crush him before he ever gets the chance to grow. The internal divide isn't just about talent, it's about trust. Who believes in him and who does? The public collapse during the stadium fiasco only threw gasoline on everything. As fans turned on the team, booing with a decade's worth of frustration, opposing fans joined in, almost mocking Cleveland's inability to stabilize the most important position in sports. The scene wasn't just chaotic, it was symbolic. It felt like a live reenactment of the franchise's darkest history. And behind the scenes, executives know the narrative is slipping out of their control. The Browns are at a crossroads. If they keep pushing down this unstable path, they risk repeating the exact failures that have defined them for years. Rushing development, forcing quarterbacks into mismatched systems, and allowing internal power struggles to sabotage progress. But if they pivot, if they finally choose a direction, commit to it, and align the entire organization behind it, they might actually break the cycle. Yet everyone can feel it. The pressure, the expectations, the fear of becoming the next name on the cursed jersey. And with tensions rising, fans turning, and the league watching, Cleveland's quarterback dilemma is no longer just a football issue. It's an organizational identity crisis, and it's reaching its breaking point. Inside the Browns' locker room, the cracks that had been quietly forming all season finally split wide open. What fans witnessed in the stadium was the public eruption, but behind closed doors, the implosion had already begun. Conversations turned confrontational, trust dissolved, lines were drawn, and the team's chemistry, once fragile but functional, collapsed under the weight of hidden frustrations that had been building for months. It started with the players, many of whom arrived at camp believing this season would be different. They were promised stability, unity, and a clear plan. Instead, they found themselves stuck in a revolving carousel of shifting strategies, inconsistent messaging, and emotional volatility. Veteran leaders felt unheard. Younger players felt unsupported. And the quarterback room, the heart of any NFL organization, was in chaos. The starting quarterback's struggles became a lightning rod for tension. Some teammates believed he was being unfairly rushed, thrown into pressure-packed moments without the proper preparation or system to succeed. Others felt he wasn't taking command the way a franchise quarterback must. The divide wasn't personal, it was philosophical. But in a locker room, philosophical divides quickly turn into emotional ones. Coaches sensed the growing unrest but couldn't agree on how to fix it. One camp pushed for patience, emphasizing development and stability. Another camp quietly lobbied for a more decisive shift, believing the current path was setting everyone up for failure. Meeting rooms grew tense. Strategy sessions had an edge. And the coaching staff, instead of presenting a unified front, unintentionally fed the uncertainty spreading through the team. Players noticed everything. Every conflicting message, every sideline disagreement, every game plan adjustment that felt like panic. Confidence evaporated, replaced by suspicion. When the team doesn't believe the coaches are aligned, they stop believing the plan itself can work. Then came the breaking point. After the stadium incident, when fans erupted, the sideline fractured, and national cameras caught it all, the internal tension exploded. Several veterans confronted position coaches about accountability. Younger players questioned why expectations kept changing week to week. Even assistant coaches started pushing back on decisions from above. Frustrated by mixed directives and the constant sense of firefighting instead of building. The locker room, once a place of camaraderie, became a collection of isolated clusters. The offensive line kept to themselves. The receivers huddled with growing frustration. Defensive leaders whispered that the offense was dragging them down. And the quarterback, caught between mentorship, criticism, and suffocating pressure, felt the weight of an entire franchise resting unevenly on his shoulders. Chemistry isn't built in a day, but it can crumble in one dramatic, unforgettable moment. And as emotions boiled over, the Browns found themselves facing something far deeper than a rough game or a controversial sideline scene. They were facing a full-scale internal breakdown. Players questioned leadership. Coaches questioned direction. And for the first time all season, the organization was forced to acknowledge a truth it had spent months avoiding. This wasn't a slump. This was a fracture. And unless Cleveland found a way to repair the broken trust, realign the locker room, and unify the vision, the collapse already unfolding internally would soon become irreversible and very, very public. While the media focuses on the viral sideline blow-ups, fan chaos, and locker room fractures, the deeper crisis unfolding in Cleveland is far more devastating than any single moment of embarrassment. Beneath the noise lies a truth that keeps executives awake at night. The Browns' championship window, once wide open and full of promise, is quietly, steadily, and perhaps permanently slipping away. This was supposed to be their moment. The roster was built for it. The investments were massive. The expectations were sky-high. Years of rebuilding and recalibrating had led to this window, a rare convergence of roster talent, veteran leadership, and financial commitment that teams spend decades chasing. Cleveland finally had the pieces: an elite defense, star playmakers, and a coaching staff believed to be capable of guiding the team deep into January football. But windows in the NFL don't stay open long. They shrink with every wasted season, every internal conflict, every missed opportunity. And this season, marred by quarterback turbulence, locker room fractures, and organizational misalignment, represents something more than disappointment. It represents erosion. The Browns aren't just losing games. They're losing time. The core of the roster isn't getting younger. Contracts are nearing expiration. Cap space will tighten. Veterans who signed believing in a playoff run are beginning to whisper about uncertainty. And the coaching staff, once considered stable, now looks increasingly vulnerable to turnover, not because they lack talent, but because the foundation beneath them is cracking. The instability at quarterback is the center of the storm, but it's not the entire weather system. The real danger is the ripple effect. When the most important position in football becomes a question mark, every other part of the organization becomes a question mark too. Game plans shift. Morale dips. Defensive stars resent carrying an unbalanced load. Offensive playmakers disengage when consistency vanishes. Momentum, one of the most powerful forces in football, disappears entirely. What makes this window so fragile is the very thing that once made it so promising: expectations. Everyone involved, from players to coaches to front office leaders, knew this was a now roster. Not a rebuild, not a development year. A championship-caliber team. And when such a roster stumbles, the pressure multiplies instantly. Mistakes feel bigger. Tension spreads faster. Panic creeps in. That's exactly what's happening now. The Browns aren't just fighting opponents on the field. They're fighting time, perception, media narratives, contract clocks, and the fear that what was once possible may no longer be. A window that looked like it would stay open for years may already be halfway shut, and the franchise knows it. The biggest threat isn't a struggling quarterback, angry fans, or chaotic headlines. It's wasted opportunity. Nothing haunts franchises longer or hits harder. If Cleveland can't stabilize the locker room, realign leadership, and develop a unified vision immediately, this window, the best chance the franchise has had in decades, will close. And when championship windows close in the NFL, they don't reopen easily. As the season spiraled deeper into chaos, the tension inside the Browns' organization didn't just simmer, it boiled. And at the very center of that pressure sat the front office, defiantly refusing to accept the reality unfolding right in front of them. Instead of acknowledging the growing instability, leadership doubled down, insisting that everything was under control. Even as players whispered, coaches snapped, and fans grew louder with every meltdown. That defiance, from the highest levels of the franchise, became the fuel pushing Cleveland toward an explosive turning point. Behind closed doors, meetings became confrontational. Front office executives clashed with coaches over personnel decisions, rotations, and communication breakdowns. Rumors suggest that certain members of leadership refused to entertain the possibility that the team needed a dramatic shift at quarterback, even as frustrations spread through the locker room. The disconnect widened by the day, creating two parallel versions of the season, one presented publicly as normal adversity, and the other felt internally as a slow-motion collapse. Players sensed it, coaches felt it, and the divide became impossible to hide. The most concerning part wasn't the mistakes on the field, it was the stubbornness at the top. Instead of adjusting course, leadership dug in, insisting their vision was flawless. They resisted accountability. They resisted input. They resisted adaptation. And in the NFL, a league where successful franchises pivot quickly and decisively, refusal to evolve becomes a fatal flaw. That defiance trickled down into every corner of the organization. Veterans who'd built their careers on winning culture started to question the direction. Younger players, caught between loyalty and frustration, found themselves stuck in silence. Even assistant coaches, normally diplomatic, began hinting at structural issues that couldn't be fixed with simple game plan tweaks or player-only meetings. But defiance can only stretch so far before reality snaps back. The moment of internal reckoning wasn't loud or dramatic, it was gradual. Week after week, the pressure built. One close loss, one viral sideline moment, one anonymous report leaking cracks within the team. Then came the tipping point, a brutal defeat that made it impossible for leadership to pretend they still had control. Public statements shifted tone. Private calls got more urgent. And for the first time all season, the Browns' top decision-makers realized they were out of road. A major organizational shift had become inevitable. Whether it's a coaching overhaul, a massive roster shakeup, or a seismic decision at quarterback, the Browns are now standing at the edge of a cliff they tried to avoid acknowledging for months. The quiet conversations happening inside the building hint at a future far different from the one they planned, not because they want change, but because they can no longer avoid it. And that's where the story takes its sharpest turn. Cleveland isn't choosing transformation, it's being forced into it. The defiance that once held the organization together has now cornered it, leaving only one path forward. A path paved with difficult decisions, uncomfortable truths, and a dramatic reset that could redefine the franchise for years. Because when pressure builds this high, something always breaks, and in Cleveland that break is coming. No matter how loudly the organization denies it, no matter how stubbornly the coaching staff resists it, and no matter how many press conferences attempt to mask the truth, the rise of QB12 is no longer a matter of speculation. It is an inevitability waiting to detonate. Every storyline, every misstep, every moment of chaos in Cleveland's season points directly toward one unavoidable conclusion. Shedeur Sanders will take the field as the Browns' starting quarterback. And when that moment arrives, it won't be quiet. It won't be smooth. It won't be politically neat. It will be seismic. The conditions for his ascent have already been built, brick by brick. Fans have chosen their quarterback. Teammates have whispered their support. Analysts have publicly questioned why he remains benched. Even opposing fan bases, normally indifferent to Cleveland's dysfunction, have started chanting for him. That sort of momentum isn't accidental. It's the natural gravitational pull that occurs when undeniable talent sits behind undeniable failure. The locker room feels the shift more intensely than anyone. Players are tired of watching drives stall, tired of watching winnable games slip away, tired of executing perfectly only to see the ball arrive late, off target, or not at all. They've seen what Sanders can do in practice. The command, the precision, the leadership presence that makes veterans straighten up and rookies lock in. They know the organization is delaying the inevitable. They also know time is running out. And once the internal belief tilts heavily toward one quarterback, the staff's resistance becomes untenable. When QB 12 finally gets the nod, whether through a formal decision or a game day emergency, the shift will be immediate. The offense will open up. Receivers will run their routes with renewed confidence. The sideline will carry a different energy. Sanders, calm and dangerous, will step under center with something the Browns haven't had in years: genuine command of the moment. But every rise comes with fallout. The first wave hits the coaching staff. Critics will pounce on why it took so long. Analysts will dissect every quote, post-game comment, and press conference from weeks prior. The defensive coordinators in the AFC North will shift their game plans instantly, knowing Cleveland has gone from predictable to explosive overnight. The second wave hits Dillon Gabriel. This isn't a benching, it's an exile. Fans have already emotionally moved on. Players, fairly or not, will associate his tenure with offensive stagnation. When he loses his spot, he doesn't just lose a job, he loses the locker room's confidence and the city's patience. And that sort of fall is nearly impossible to reverse. The third and most dramatic wave hits the front office. Their hesitance, their defiance, their refusal to pivot earlier will be scrutinized ruthlessly. If Sanders succeeds, ownership will start questioning why the franchise endangered a playoff window by delaying the obvious. Jobs could be lost, power could shift, philosophies could be rewritten entirely. But the fourth wave, that's the one fans care about. It's the wave that marks the start of the Sanders era, an era built on swagger, precision, poise, and a competitive fire Cleveland hasn't seen in decades. An era that could redefine the franchise. Because once QB 12 rises, he won't just change the offense. He'll change everything. When you step back and look at everything that has unfolded, on the field, on the sidelines, in the locker room, and across social media, it becomes impossible to pretend this is just another rough stretch in Cleveland Browns history. This isn't one bad game, one panicked coaching decision, or one frustrated fan reaction. What happened at MetLife Stadium exposed a deeper truth the franchise can't outrun anymore. The Browns are standing at a crossroads where every choice carries weight, every hesitation has consequences, and every wasted moment chips away at a window that will not stay open forever. The story isn't merely about Gabriel's struggles or Shedeur Sanders' readiness. It's about a franchise fighting its own reflection. For years, Cleveland has cycled through quarterbacks, systems, and promises. They've patched holes, gambled on potential, and doubled down on gut feelings that never materialized. And now they finally possess something rare, an actual solution, yet they hesitate to use it. That hesitation is what drives the frustration, the anger, and the disbelief echoing from the fan base to the locker room. Cleveland's collapse in New York didn't just spark a conversation, it forced a reckoning. The fans who have lived through decades of disappointment recognized instantly what the coaching staff refused to admit. This team is one decision away from either salvaging its season or spiraling into another year defined by regret. The players, watching in real time as scoring opportunities evaporated, felt that urgency even more directly. They know what Sanders brings. They've seen the difference up close. And they've reached the point where silence speaks louder than any press conference excuse. The Browns can no longer afford to pretend this is about patience, development, or trusting the process. It's about survival. It's about competing in a division where slow decisions equal fast eliminations. It's about honoring the work put in during the off-season, the sacrifices made by players, and the expectations of a city that's waited far too long for consistent success. The truth is simple. The status quo is unsustainable. The tension inside the locker room will keep growing. The fan pressure will intensify. The media scrutiny will sharpen. Every future game will carry the weight of MetLife. Every mistake by Gabriel, every missed opportunity, every stalled drive will feel like déjà vu. The cries for change will only grow louder, more unified, more demanding. And yet, within that chaos lies hope. The Browns have a quarterback in Shedeur Sanders who embodies everything this moment requires: poise under pressure, confidence without arrogance, and a competitive fire that radiates through the entire roster. His presence alone signals possibility. His readiness signals urgency. And his silence throughout this turmoil signals maturity beyond his years. Cleveland's future hinges on one decision: whether they embrace that possibility now or wait until the season collapses beyond repair. The path forward is clear, even if the leadership refuses to acknowledge it out loud. Because the truth is no longer hidden, speculative, or up for debate. The truth is standing on the sideline, helmet on, chin strap fastened, waiting for the franchise to finally open its eyes. And the moment they do, everything changes.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.